Well, first speed cameras know this. Let's begin. The article says that new artificial intelligence cameras are set to be installed on motorways to catch litter-outs red-handed. High-tech AI cameras will be put in place in laybys in the coming weeks as part of a trial to detect littering. Drivers and issue them with fines of up to £100. The cameras will be able to scan the area to spot people throwing rubbish out of their vehicles and automatically send images to an enforcement control room. And it marks a significant change from the current process whereby enforcement officers have to trawl through hours of traditional CCTV footage to identify offenders. And under the new AI system, the control room will be able to review images immediately and issue a fixed penalty notice to the person registered on the number plate. And National Highways has teamed up with the East Hampshire County Council subsidiary ECHS, who will manage the cameras and issue the fines, as the Highways body does not have the power to take enforcement action. It hasn't been confirmed exactly where the cameras will be placed, but they are expected to be dotted around the southeast, with a few likely along the A3 in Hampshire, as pressure has been building up on the national highways to clean up the road network across the country. And last month, Transport Minister Richard Holden admitted almost 40% of national highways roads were graded below B for litter, which means significant levels of rubbish were found. Campaign group Clean Up Britain said in February that it would launch legal action against the highways body unless the litter situation in the country's motorways improves, reports the Telegraph. Now obviously, it goes without saying, doesn't it, that people shouldn't litter or fly tip or anything like that, and should use a thing called a bin. But if these cameras can pick up the minutest detail, like for example a sweet wrapper, which presumably they can do if they can just find people for doing such a thing, then it just makes me wonder what else they can pick up. Because let's face it, they've got to be bloody good, haven't they? Can zoom in far and have crystal clear detail. In which case, will we ever come to a stage where those cameras could actually be used to look inside your car and detect for other things, for example? Although yes, admittedly that is a massive long shot, and hopefully they would never do such a thing, but it just makes me wonder how far they would push that. And whilst of course they are trying to come across as, oh, we're doing it for the environment to make sure there's no litter and things like that, which admittedly in itself is not a bad idea to have a nice clean road, but something tells me it's more actually for this. Because let's face it, those cameras aren't exactly going to be cheap, are they? And what happens, for example, if you lend your car to someone? Are we going to get into a sort of speed camera thing where if someone borrows your car, you have to prove your innocence that you weren't speeding? And in this case, it would be to prove you're not littering, as that was not your hand out of the window chucking the Mars bar wrapper. Also, thinking about it, what happens if one of your kids in the back decides to chuck something out of the car without you even noticing? I mean, if you don't want a fine, are you expected to stop at the hard shoulder, if there is one, with all these smart motorways about, and then go and pick the litter wrapper up? In which case, that could actually be quite dangerous and cause a few accidents, all depending on the severity someone decides is needed to stop. And with all these cameras dotted about, it just makes me wonder what's next. Maybe, who knows, cameras in cars? But then, of course, we're not China, and it's about time these guys realise that. Because let's face it, we don't all want to get into a situation where you just happen to glance to your mate to talk to them, and then you get a fine through the post, well, I don't know, driving without due care and attention, or something like that. Which apparently, through speed cameras, can actually look in your car and to see if you're wearing a seatbelt, although something like this would surely go to the next level, wouldn't it? And if cameras did happen to look inside your car, surely that's a bit of an invasion of privacy, isn't it? And in which case it would make me want to drive around with a permanent V sign stuck on the windscreen just in case. Oh, thinking about it, I might pee off a few other people as well. 2 new immigration centres as part of Rishi Sunak's Stop the Boots pledge will not be ready until at least early next year. The sites in Hampshire and Oxfordshire would boost the UK's capacity to detain migrants by 1,000. A government source told The Times it means we'll still have a cap of 2,500 at most, and a lot of those spaces are needed for current immigration offenders, let alone channel migrants. Any delay risks the government's plans to detain migrants who cross the channel in small boats. The current detention capacity is around 2,500, although facilities are less than half full. But the illegal migration bill will increase the need for places, as it gives ministers powers to detain people who arrive in the UK illegally for at least 28 days before they are removed to either their home country or a third country such as Rwanda. The government hopes the bill, which has cleared the Commons and is currently going through the Lords, will be passed by the end of July. And Home Secretary Suella Braverman last night acknowledged Britain's current detention capacity is insufficient, but she dismissed claims that tens of thousands of places would be needed, as she pointed out the deterrent effect of the bill. Miss Braverman told the BBC, No one is saying that we need 45 or even 100,000 new detention places. And that's because we want to design a scheme whereby if you arrive here illegally, you'll be detained and thereafter swiftly located to a safe country like Rwanda or your home country. A Home Office spokesperson said immigration removal centre capacity will not cause delays to the passage of the illegal immigration bill, and the bill will enable us to remove people as quickly as possible, meaning they will be in detention for a shorter amount of time. We'll also be working with these new sites as a priority while looking at finding alternative solutions to further increase the detention capacity. Well, hang on a minute, we often hear that roughly 4, 5, maybe even 600 or 700 people arrive illegally by boat every day. So surely increasing it by 1,000 or even the current 2,500 cap is only going to last a few days. So it all depends how swiftly they intend to move these people in and out of those places, doesn't it? And of course, while we hear them talk the strong talk, which admittedly does sound good, to be honest, I think I'll believe it when I see it, because let's face it, we've been in this boat before, haven't we? I mean, it was Priti Patel in the first place who announced this Rwanda plan, which is surely a year or even 2 years ago. And as yet, as far as I'm aware, not a single person has been deported there, which of course no doubt the government is going to blame on the bill still going through the Lords. And whilst presumably they haven't made any amendments so far in the first 2 readings, it doesn't mean that they won't do this time, especially as this is the 3rd and last reading of the bill. Let's face it, the more time this takes to get up and running, the more stupid and less of a deterrent it actually seems. But in general, I actually think the government may, at the moment, feel less pressure with the bill going through the Lords, because let's face it, they don't have to do anything at the moment, do they? But once it clears the Lords and is actually law, they will have to start doing stuff, and presumably anyway. And if they don't, or for whatever reason doesn't work out as well as they planned, and you've still got all the lefty lawyers play their usual tricks, then it's not exactly going to paint them in a very good light, is it? And in which case would probably certainly mean that they'd have as much chance of winning an election as, I don't know, a midget reaching a top shelf magazine. But I do have a better idea, and it is one that would put nearly every person off who attempts to cross the channel illegally. And that is, when they rescue these people from their small dinghies, instead of taking them back to England, they take them back to France straight away. And yes, no doubt, of course, you'd have a lot of lefty people saying, but what about their human rights? They're fleeing from war and things like that. But at the end of the day, France is not a war, as far as I'm aware anyway. And therefore, to be honest, I can't really see how anyone attempting to get refugee status coming from France is therefore genuine. But, I guess that's just me. Well, as far as the left is concerned anyway. No doubt, of course, they probably think they're all genuine, even though quite a lot of them chuck their phones in the sea and strangely forget to bring their family with them when they're fleeing war. And they're also in their 20 to 30s, which doesn't really make much sense either, because if their country was at war, shouldn't they really be defending it rather than fleeing, whilst leaving their poor old relatives behind? It not only, of course, makes a mockery of our points-based system, but if this bill that Rishi and the government are trying to get through the House of Commons at the moment doesn't actually deter people or work at all, then we're going to be a laughingstock, aren't we? And we'll surely look more stupid than Keir Starmer in a tutu. Drugs for common ailments such as sore throats and earaches will be available directly from pharmacies to try to free up GPs. Medicines normally needed in a prescription will be offered over the counter to help clear 15 million doctors' appointments. Women will no longer need to see a GP to secure the contraceptive pill, while pharmacies will perform 2.5 million blood pressure tests a year under the wide-ranging plans. Actions to ease pressure on GPs will be unveiled today as Rishi Sunak vows to end the 8 a.m. rush for appointments. Writing in today's Sun, the PM says services have come under real strain post-COVID, and he promises practical steps to relieve pressure on doctors and in turn hospitals. The plan will be seen as an attempt to reset the Tories after last week's local elections drubbing, in which the party lost 1,000 council seats. High street pharmacies will be given powers to prescribe antibiotics for the first time, and red tape around prescribing will be cut before the winter for basic sore, ear and water infections. And not forgetting other things as well. The patients will get to self-refer for the NHS physiotherapy, podiatry and hearing tests. Amanda Pritchard, Chief of NHS England, said, "This blueprint will help us free up millions of appointments for those who need them most, as well as supporting staff who do less admin and spend more time with patients." Thoran Gurand, hope I pronounced that right, chairwoman of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society, said these plans will provide better access to care. Well, to be honest, in general, I think it is good that we'll get access to more stuff we need without having to actually go to the doctors in the first place. I mean, it must be quite embarrassing for some people to see the doctor first. Like, for example, if women want the contraceptive pill, then in my opinion that is their choice and they should be entitled to it without having to see someone first. Although something like this would surely be a a slippery slope for other things. I mean, they can perform blood pressure tests and hearing tests, but where else would that go? I mean, what sort of tests would they then be expected to perform next? I mean, could we one day see a situation where people who work at the pharmacy could refer you to the hospital themselves without seeing a doctor first, or be able to prescribe certain drugs themselves which may have quite severe side effects, in which case I don't really think it should go that far, and therefore surely would be a mistake, because let's face it, they don't really have the same sort of training as doctors, well, as far as I'm aware anyway. Maybe, who knows, in about 10-15 years time you just have to go to the pharmacist, tell them what your symptoms are, they put it in a computer and dish out the medication you need, rather than actually go see the doctor themselves, unless of course they feel like doing away with doctors and just using pharmacists. Although hopefully that's a massive long shot, and let's face it, I don't think it would really happen. And I've heard that the government are apparently trying to recruit 19,000 of them, but who knows how long that would take, especially when it's taken a few years to recruit the 20,000 police officers. No doubt of course this is another government brainwave which hopefully will work, but I mean, who knows. Although in this video it seems like the government has U-turned on a brainwave that they had some time ago, which to be honest is a relief for us all. Anyway, subscribe for more and I'll see you in the next one.